حيد عن الجيش يا غبيشي قبل الحنا طير ما يطيلو ما يطيلو ما حد عن الجيش لا ويشي واللي عاد غبيشي يا ذلو يا ذلو عين وضرب.
I want to begin by thanking Masar Badil and all of the comrades that have been involved in organising this platform. Solidarity to all of you from a son of Ireland and the struggle against imperialism in Britain. I must also send a shout out to Comrade Asim El-Kabi, who is again locked up by the Zionist regime. Comrade Asim contributed his stories on political organising and music after his 18 years imprisonment, and has again been vindictively imprisoned by the Zionist regime. We demand the release of Asim El-Kabi and all political prisoners of Zionism and imperialism. To briefly introduce my work, I've been researching Palestinian music in various forms for the past 2 decades, with the most significant results of this work the documentary on Kufiyya and the book Palestinian Music in Exile, which will be released by AUC Press this September. My work has been entirely independent, I must say, of any funding body, and at a time when some academics offer their thanks to Zionist archives or libraries, stands firmly on the side of resistance and anti-normalization. Today I will introduce some, but by no means all, of the revolutionary moments whereby Palestinian liberation and music have joined forces. To begin, some music, and probably the oldest recorded example of Palestinian resistance song. The Palestinian Revolution of 1936 to 39 was the most significant and sustained anti-colonial confrontation in the Arab world of its time. Its defeat by the British using brutal counterinsurgency methods they had applied in India, Egypt, Ireland and elsewhere paved the way for the Nakba. Mass participation in the uprising was a radicalizing force for Palestinian poetry and music, as we hear in this grainy but important example. The singer is Nimr Nasser al-Yafawi, and the recording is from 1936. Nimr Nasser had been a tarab vocalist, that is, singing the then fashionable songs of love and flirtation in the 1920s. His name appeared alongside Rajab al-Akhad in an advert for 78 vinyl records released by the Egyptian Bidophone Company in the 1920s. The vast majority of these records have been lost, looted and hidden from history. What they cannot silence, of course, is popular memory. The next brief example features oral historian Hussein Ali Lubani, who from exile in Lebanon recounted the poetry and melodies of resistance from the 1930s. This musical poem is dedicated to the martyr Izz ad-Din al-Qasim.
آل الناس عز الدين يا مرحوم موتك دارس لا نعمه لو كنت تدوم يا رئيس المجاهدين عز الدين يا خسرتك روحت فدا لأمتك مين بينكر شهامتك يا رئيس المجاهدين.
I want to look at another revolutionary period via the thread of Ghassan Kanafani, who introduced the definitive study of 1936 to 39. Discussing the new generation of resistance poets emerging in the 1960s, Ghassan concluded that cultural resistance is essential and no less important than the armed resistance itself. The Palestinian Revolution after 1967 witnessed a renaissance in folklore and artistic expression, including traditional songs, poetry and clothing. It will take a whole series of discussions and listening sessions to explore many of these trends, but I would like to briefly introduce the resistance singers analysed in my recent study, Exile Songwriters of the Palestinian Revolution, which looks at the work of Zainab Shaath, Kofiya and George Kirmes. Firstly, Zainab Shaath, who grew up in Alexandria, Egypt. Zainab describes picking up the guitar and writing songs in English as a very conscious decision, and the music she wrote as a teenager expresses a mission to communicate the narrative of Palestinian resistance on a global level.
Take me back, oh God, to my country, a nightingale. Take me back, oh God, to my country. On the wind of a cloud, in the light of a star, return me a lily that flutters on the bosom of a spring and a hill, singing sunrise, singing spring, melting in my warmth the frost.
Zainab recorded this work for her 1972 record, The Urgent Call of Palestine, which was produced as a film by Ismail Shammout in Lebanon. She would go on to perform in East Germany and the Soviet Union, and continue to perform at gatherings for Palestine in the US until the mid-1980s. Of the same generations were Palestinian Swedish members of the Kofiya band led by George Totori, who fled Nazareth for Gothenburg in 1967. Kofiya produced 4 albums in Sweden from 1976 to 1988, and later reformed for a 5th released in the last couple of years. The band's activities really spoke to the fusion of grassroots political culture and movements of anti-imperialist resistance on the ground in Europe, and their work took them to concerts in Denmark, West Berlin and Iran during its revolutionary period. Born into a working-class family in the Armenian quarter in Jerusalem, George Kirmes learned to play in his early years with the Al-Bara'im band, but it was after 1976, after Zionist arrests and family crises, that he ended up in Michigan, US, from where he would produce an influential and popular set of resistance songs.
واقتل كل الأحباب واحرق بيتي احرق زرعي واحرق كل كتاب فمحال أن يروي ظمأ العطشان غدير سراب غدير سراب غدير سراب صبرا لن ينتصر الناب على بسمة طفلي صبرا يا أمي صبرا يا أختي صبرا 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 واحتملي سنسمر تلك الأيدي فوق الأبواب ونذبح ذاك الوحش بتلك الأنياب سنسمر تلك الأيدي فوق الأبواب ونذبح ذاك الوحش بتلك الأنياب سيغني البلبل سيعشعش فوق الأعشاب ويطلع فجر الشام ولن يطلعه غير الأحباب.
George Kirmes was closely associated with the PFLP and recorded 4 albums between 1980 and 1985 while touring the US and appearing at many pro-Palestine events. His final album was dedicated to the cause of Palestinian political prisoners, and he continued to perform until the end of the decade. While the dawn of Oslo's great betrayal has not yet broken, here was a language of resistance. Palestine has witnessed many intifadas before and since the appearance of the musicians I've mentioned. Cassettes passed like wildfire before and after the revolutionary explosion of December 1987, and during the same period in Al-Naqab prison camp, Saleh Abdul-Ruba composed and led the singing of Ya Naqab Kun Irada, O Naqab be strong. The spirit of movements past is alive in the new generations of singers, musicians, DJs, oud players and many more. The Unity Intifada of May 2021 was arguably a musical uprising as well as a political one, while the intensified armed resistance that we've seen in recent months in response to the racist government has led to a new breed of singers, songwriters and people standing in artistic solidarity with the uprising. In 1965, Che Guevara wrote, "Revolutionaries will come who will sing the song of the new man and woman in the true voice of the people. Long live the Palestinian Revolution."